Welcome to this sanctuary of hope. If you come in feeling tired, may you find rest. If you come in feeling isolation or loneliness, may you find connection. If you come in feeling hurt or down, may you feel safety and perhaps find or connect with some beauty that you can hold close to your heart. If you come in hoping to be a part of making justice, may you find companions with whom you can lean in and in the coming days and weeks help make the world a better place. Welcome to our celebration of life.
The offering God desires is your presence. Stop and wait upon the beloved. Breathe. This is the Holy of Holies. Destroy the temple of doing and let the temple of being rise up from within. Remember, the entrance door to the sanctuary is inside you. I will now light the chalice as a symbol of beloved community. Our reading today is by Tara Brauch from a piece entitled Touching the Ground. Awareness of the body is our gateway into the truth of what is. This gateway to refuge was crucial to the Buddha's own awakening. When Siddhartha Gautama took his seat at the base of the Bodhi tree, the tree of awakening, he resolved to stay there until he found full freedom. He began his meditation by collecting his attention, quieting his mind, and coming back to a full and balanced presence. But then, as the story is told, the demon Mara appeared, accompanied by a massive army, and with many deadly weapons and magical forces at his disposal. Mara is a tempter. His name means delusion in Pali. Throughout the night, Mara hurled rocks and arrows, boiling mud and blistering sands to provoke Gautama to fight or flee. Yet he met these attacks with a compassionate presence, and the missiles were transformed into celestial flowers. Dawn was fast approaching when Mara issued his final challenge: doubt. What proof, Mara asked, did Gautama have of his compassion? How could he be sure his heart was awakened? Mara was targeting the core reactivity that hooks and sustains the sense of small self, the perception of our own unworthiness. Gautama did not try to use a meditative technique to prove himself. Rather, he touched the earth and asked it to bear witness to his compassion, to the truth of what he was. In response, the earth responded with a shattering roar. I bear you witness. Terrified, Mara and his forces dispersed in all directions.
Sanctuary at every level of the concentric circles of our lives is important. And I believe that the program of Rebuilding Philly, which we're engaging in next weekend again, we're involved in a multiple-year commitment with our neighbors in our beloved city, is helping with sanctuary, having people have safe, healthy houses. And I just want to lift up, we do need a few more folks, especially on Saturday, and we need a couple Spanish speakers on Saturday. We're trying to spread out the Spanish speakers over the course of the 3-day week. So if you're interested, please see George or Barbara. So one of the earliest memories I have of being safe and happy is I got the chance when I was in elementary school to walk home for lunch, have lunch at home, and I go home and get out the vinyl and put a record on the turntable. And one of my first albums was Casey and the Sunshine Band, greatest hits. And I like to dance by myself at lunch. And it was a great lunch. What is an earliest memory you have of being safe and happy? Spiritual question of the month is, what does it mean to be a people of sanctuary? Sanctuary conjures ideas such as a space to retreat from the dangers and depletions of the world. The Soul Matters curriculum, which we're using on sanctuary, reminds us, as we dig deeper, we see that sanctuaries in our lives do more than simply protect us. They also send us. They don't just help us heal from our journeys, they strengthen us for the new journeys ahead. Sanctuaries don't just whisper, "Come and rest," but they also say, "Be filled and go." And sanctuaries can make us happy. So, what does it mean to be a person who finds within themselves a retreat from the dangers and depletions of the world? How do we rest in ourselves and fill our tanks for living? We start with a few problems. For millennium, prophets and poets alike have mused that nobody escapes suffering. The Buddha taught everyone experiences insecurity, isolation, and feelings of basic wrongness. Basic wrongness. Catholic justice advocate Dorothy Day said, "We have all known the long loneliness." The long loneliness. Shakespeare's Hamlet named the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And some of our suffering seems to grow by way of our preventative efforts. Tara Brach talks about it like this. She says, we're born with a beautiful open spirit, alive with innocence and resilience. And then we bring that goodness into a difficult world. Imagine, she writes, that at the moment of birth we begin to develop a protective suit designed to help us navigate our strange new environment out of the womb. And the suit includes things like, for example, tension in the body and emotions such as anger, the shield of anger, anxiety, shame, mental activity such as judging and obsessing. So, for example, a person who fears being criticized may develop a protective suit of working extensively on pleasing others. A person who feels anxious may develop a protective suit of eating to change feelings. Another's protective suit could include doing, do in order to prove their self-worth. And then problems can multiply when the line blurs between the suits and us. In the confusion of thinking that we are the suit or the suit is us, we lose our capacity to find sanctuary in our true selves. The good news is that in almost every moment of our lives, there's an opportunity to relocate, reconnect, and wake up with true self. Relocate, reconnect, and wake up with true self. Yourself. After the Buddha found enlightenment in that crazy story, where he had to deal with a lot of stress And animosity coming at him after he found enlightenment, he made a radical promise. He said we can all human beings can find true refuge within our own hearts and minds in the midst of our moment-to-moment lives as the life develops with the suffering. No matter how challenging the situation, one can always take refuge, the Buddha said, in a healing and liberating presence. And in the ever more exciting relationship between religion and science, neuroscience continues to illuminate some of what's happening when we talk about finding refuge in ourself. There's volumes of research developing now. I encourage you to check it out. With the help of brain imaging and other techniques, researchers have discovered the brain's inherent neuroplasticity. New neural pathways can be created and strengthened, and the brain and mind can continue to develop and change throughout life at all ages, with very few exceptions, which my understanding is includes a couple diseases which impair the brain from this. Brain disease is one of the keys that can, but besides that, from the baby to the dying person and everyone in between can develop these neural pathways. And so while we get caught in the very deep emotional ruts of our lives, we have the capacity to create fresh ways of responding to life. And so in our busy lives, how do we go about this? Finding sanctuary in self. Well, you got to find a way that works for you. That right? But here, it's good that we share some of the success stories that people are having. And the first thing, I like Thich Nhat Hanh is big on this. I think the Dalai Lama is too. Don't take yourself too seriously. He tends to think, I've heard him say, I've never been in a room with either, but that U.S. people tend to get a little too serious about themselves in these efforts on the whole. So breathe and smile. And the smile is maybe a little harder sometimes for the Westerners. We're newer to this stuff culturally, because with a smile on your face, you can pause and give yourself a better chance to engage in that sanctuary of self. It can involve laughter from the gut. Finding sanctuary in self may involve exploring an art form with which you have decades, years, or absolutely no experience. One woman I know about took up painting. She had painted some as a child and a young adult, but she gave up because she felt she wasn't good enough, didn't have the time. And to her delight, not only did she enjoy the experience of using brushes, oils, and canvas, but she also recounted that rather than being the observer, noticing a particular kind of tree, she developed this kind of subjective intimacy of living textures and colors. And she said, I became part of the dance of the aliveness of the tree. I became part of the dance of the aliveness. Wow. That sounds like good news to me. That sounds like something a lot of us would like to be a part of in moments of our lives. Married couples, any kind of couples, can help each other to find sanctuary of self. Married couples who experience tension or conflict can make an agreement. Whenever one is feeling conflict or escalating emotions, they can request a pause for presence. I request we pause for presence right now. And both adults agree that if one asks for a pause, there's no further debate. Instead, they just take 15-minute pause, in which time they're both allowed to take sanctuary in self This could be, just focus on your breath. It could be going and singing, when I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. And I know couples who are doing this who say not only does it reduce the frequency and intensity of the conflicts, but they experience an overall enrichment of the texture of the relationship throughout the days. In many situations, it can be good to just pause and take space between the experience and the response we give to the experience. And many Buddhist teachers call this rain. Recognize what is happening. Just recognize it. What is. Allow life to be just as it is, and that's a hard one for Unitarian Universalists. I'm not being facetious, but this does not mean endorsement. Allow life to be just as it is, I think, is really a deep acknowledgement of this is reality now. You can still try to change it later, but this is it. This is what's here. Investigate the inner experience with kindness, compassion. What's going on for me right now? Maybe I'm feeling rejected, or my expectations were so different, I'm really disappointed. But just with kindness, go inside, say, what's here? What's going on with this intensity reaction I have to this situation? And then non-identification, that's the N in rain. I'm angry, but I'm not anger. I'm Kent. I'm not, this emotion doesn't define me. So that's rain, and that can give space for keeping that sanctuary of you even when things are ugly or unfair, which they get. And this is remarkable. This is not prescription, this is description of miracles that happen. Sanctuary of self can develop, including for people who've suffered trauma. War veterans coming back from Iraq and Pakistan, Afghanistan, are working with meditation leaders and finding ways back to themselves. Tara Brock tells of an Iraqi war veteran who worked on healing his trauma, and he had gone through so much. His body had been broken, and he had participated and seen so much. It was a very difficult life. So the only way they figured out, as far as they could figure to start, was he would meditate on feeling his feet. He couldn't do a full body scan meditation because there was too much trauma, and it would just click him right back into revisiting the trauma. So for weeks, he just was able to think, what do my feet feel like right now? And he used a mantra of, I'm embraced by a loving universal spirit. I am embraced by a universal loving spirit. And progress started to happen, and he was able to move more towards full body scans. And he called it, this tough guy, military vet, called it his journey back to being alive. It can happen, and people have been abused at any age and any place, many times can feel that reconnection with being alive, and many times it's good to do it with a professional, a counselor, a minister, or other. But we keep those hopes in front of us and participate in making as much of it happen as possible. You can do this wherever you are. You might do it at the end of the night, in the beginning of the morning. You might have a particular place, a room, or a nook in your house where you read a novel, listen to some music, or light some candles. You might like to just open the windows and listen to the crickets. You might just want to sit and follow your breath. But the universal promise is, most any moment offers an opportunity to nestle in the sanctuary of self
Before creation, a presence existed, self-contained, complete, formless, voiceless, mateless, changeless, which yet pervaded itself with unending motherhood. Though there can be no name for it, I've called it the way of life.
Perhaps I should have called it the fullness of life, since fullness implies widening into space, implies still further widening, implies widening until the circle is whole.
In this sense, the way of life is fulfilled, heaven is fulfilled, earth is fulfilled, and the fit person also is fulfilled.
There are the four amplitudes of the universe, and a fit person is one of them.
People around you